Imagine starting with nothing. No resources, no connections, no head start. Just you and a burning desire to change your life. That's where every unstoppable person begins. From zero. Think about it. Every great story you admire, the successful entrepreneur, the inspiring athlete, the artist who touched the world, at one point, they were a nobody, unknown, unnoticed, uncertain. But here's the truth. Zero is not weakness. Zero is power. Zero is possibility. Zero is the clean page where your story begins. Zero is proof that you still have something to fight for. Let me ask you this. Have you ever looked at someone who has achieved greatness and thought, if I had what they had, I'd be successful too? We've all done it. We compare. We wish. We blame circumstances. But here's the secret. They didn't start with what they have now. They built it, brick by brick, step by step, failure after failure. Think about J.K. Rowling. She was rejected by 12 publishers before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. She started with zero. Or Michael Jordan, cut from his high school basketball team. Zero. Or Oprah, fired from her first TV job. Zero. Zero doesn't mean the end. Zero means the beginning. The problem is most people fear starting small. They want the big stage, the big paycheck, the big recognition, without being willing to endure the small, invisible steps. But it's in those invisible steps that Unstoppable is built. The late nights no one sees. The failures no one claps for. The sacrifices no one applauds. That's where strength is forged. See, unstoppable people are not born with extraordinary talent. They're ordinary people who refuse to quit. They're people who take the punch, wipe the blood, and whisper, "Is that all you've got?" Ask yourself, what if your zero is the very thing that will make your story unforgettable? Because when you start with nothing, you learn resilience. When you start with nothing, you learn creativity. When you start with nothing, you learn hunger. And hunger will always beat comfort. Now here's the shift. The moment you decide that your past does not define you, that's when Unstoppable begins. Maybe you grew up in a home where no one believed in you. Maybe you failed more times than you can count. Maybe you've been told you'll never make it. Good. Let that be your fuel. Let light a fire so fierce that nothing can put it out. Because Unstoppable is not about never falling. It's about rising every single time you do. Imagine yourself a year from now. Where could you be if you refused to give up? Imagine 5 years from now. What would your life look like if you started building today? And let me tell you something. You don't need to see the whole staircase. Just the next step. Just one. That's how zero becomes momentum. And momentum becomes unstoppable. Here are some key points related to this. Zero is not weakness. It's the starting point of possibility. Greatness is built through small, invisible steps no one sees. Failure, rejection, and setbacks are part of every unstoppable journey. Hunger and resilience developed at zero beat comfort every time. Unstoppable people are ordinary individuals who refuse to quit. The decision to rise, again and again, is what turns zero into unstoppable. Point zero is not weakness. It's the starting point possibility. Think about the number zero itself. At first glance, it looks like nothing, empty, hollow. But what if I told you zero is not emptiness, but potential? Zero is the canvas before the artist's brush touches it. It's the soil before the seed is planted. It's the silence before the music begins. Without zero, there's no place to begin, no space to grow, no foundation to build upon. And the truth is, every single person who has ever achieved something extraordinary once stood exactly there, staring at the same blank page, the same silence, the same soil. Imagine a young man with no money in his pocket, no name that anyone knows, and no doors opening for him. People look at him and see failure, but he looks at himself and sees a beginning. That man could be Steve Jobs, who once said, "I was worth over $1 million when I was 23, and over $10 million when I was 24, and over $100 million when I was 25, and it wasn't that important because I never did it for the money." But rewind his story and you'll see he started from zero in his parents' garage, tinkered with parts that looked like junk, fueled only by imagination and determination. Out of nothing, he built something, And that is the magic of zero. It holds the invisible blueprint of what could be, waiting for courage to shape it into reality. Think about a seed. To the naked eye, it is small, fragile, and almost meaningless. You can hold hundreds in your hand. But beneath its hard shell lies an entire forest waiting to be born. A tree taller than houses. Branches strong enough to hold birds' nests. Shade wide enough to shelter families on hot summer days. That seed looks like nothing, but in truth, it is everything. It is possibility in its purest form. And just like the seed, when you are at zero, you hold a potential inside you that the world cannot yet see. The problem is, most of us fear zero because it feels like vulnerability. We measure ourselves against others who are already running when we're still learning how to stand. We look at their success and forget that once upon a time, they too were crawling through the mud of obscurity. J.K. Rowling, the author who inspired millions, once sat in a cafe scribbling stories while struggling as a single mother, rejected by 12 publishers. She later said, "Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life." Do you hear that? Rock bottom. Zero. The place that looked like failure became the birthplace of magic. Zero humbles us. It strips away illusions. It forces us to face who we really are when the applause is gone, when the resources are gone, when the comfort is gone. And in that silence, you discover something priceless. You discover yourself. Imagine standing in an empty room. No furniture. No decorations. Just you. At first, it feels lonely, uncomfortable. But slowly, you begin to see the possibilities. You could place a chair here, a painting there, maybe a window that lets the light in. The emptiness is not the end of beauty. It is the beginning of creation. The truth is, starting from zero teaches you things success never can. When you have nothing, you learn to be resourceful. You learn to stretch what little you have, to think creatively, to solve problems with grit rather than gold. A child born into wealth may have advantages, but the one born with nothing learns resilience, learns hunger, learns how to fight. And it is that hunger that propels people to greatness. Because comfort creates complacency, but hunger creates drive. There's a story of Sylvester Stallone that perfectly captures this. Before Rocky became one of the most iconic films in history, Stallone was a struggling actor. He had so little money that he had to sell his dog, his best friend, for $50 just to pay rent. He was rejected over 1,000 times for acting roles, but he refused to give up. Then he wrote Rocky, poured his soul into the script, and when studios wanted to buy it without letting him star in it, he turned them down. He held his ground, even when he was broke. Eventually, one studio agreed, and the rest is history. That film not only changed his life, it inspired millions. But remember, it began at zero. Hungry, desperate, unknown. And that's what makes zero so powerful. It strips you of excuses. When you have nothing, there's nothing left to lose. You are free to take risks, to experiment, to chase what sets your soul on fire. Failure doesn't scare you anymore, because you've already felt what it's like to be at the bottom. In fact, failure becomes your teacher. Each setback whispers, try again, adjust, keep going. And slowly, the cracks in the wall give way. The doors start to open, and the impossible begins to take shape. Zero is the equalizer of humanity. No matter where you come from, no matter how many privileges or disadvantages you've had, everyone must face a version of it. And that is where the playing field is level, not in what we are given, but in how we choose to respond when we have nothing. Some see zero and run from it. Others see zero and rise from it. I want you to imagine this. Standing on the edge of a cliff with nothing in your hands, the world below you vast and intimidating. It feels terrifying. But then you spread your arms, leap, and for the first time, you feel the wind lifting you higher. That's what zero is. The jump, the leap of faith, the moment where you stop clinging to safety and step into possibility. It's not weakness to be at zero. Weakness is pretending you're somewhere else, refusing to start, refusing to risk. Strength is admitting, I'm at the beginning, but I'm here and I'm ready. Strength is embracing zero as the birthplace of transformation. So when you feel like you have nothing, remember, nothing is not the absence of possibility. Nothing is the soil, the silence, the seed. Nothing is where everything begins. And the ones who embrace zero, who nurture it, who endure it, are the ones who eventually rise and show the world what unstoppable truly looks like. Greatness is built through small, invisible steps no one sees. When people look at someone who has made it to the top, they only notice the spotlight, the applause, the glory. They see the finished product, polished and shining, but they rarely stop to ask what came before it. The truth is, the journey to greatness is paved not with giant leaps, but with countless small, unseen, and often uncelebrated steps. Those moments in the shadows when no one is watching, when no one is clapping, when no one even knows you're trying. That's where the real work happens. Picture a young athlete who dreams of becoming a champion. To the world, the only thing that will matter is the medal around their neck. But what the world will never see are the mornings when the alarm rings at 4 a.m. and it's still dark outside. The world won't see the sweat dripping from their face as they push themselves harder than yesterday, even when their muscles are burning and their lungs feel like they're on fire. They'll never see the pain of rejection, the failures in practice, the nights when doubt whispers in their ear. And yet, those hidden moments are the foundation on which greatness stands. It's the same in every field. Think of Thomas Edison. People remember him as a man who invented the light bulb, but how many know he failed over 1,000 times before he got it right? Edison himself said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Imagine the patience, the persistence, the countless nights of tinkering with wires, filaments, and chemicals in a dimly lit workshop. Nobody was applauding him then. Nobody was writing headlines. He was alone with his failures, and still, he kept going. That invisible work created the visible miracle that lit up the world. The world applauds the moment you cross the finish line, but it does not see the months of training that prepared your legs to carry you there. The world cheers when you release a book, but it does not see the late nights staring at a blank page, battling writer's block, or deleting whole chapters that didn't feel right. The world celebrates a musician on stage, but it does not see the hours spent repeating the same note until their fingers bled. Greatness looks glamorous only in the spotlight, but behind the curtain, it is anything but. It is messy, repetitive, lonely, and invisible. Invisible steps are the ones you take when you're tempted to quit, but choose not to. They are the sacrifices you make when no one says thank you, when no one notices your effort. They are the hours you invest in yourself even when you're exhausted, even when no one believes in you. These steps don't get posted on social media. They don't get written about, and they don't get recognition. Yet they are the very steps that separate the dreamers from the doers. Think of a sculptor staring at a block of marble. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing but a rock. But the sculptor sees what others don't. Every small strike of the chisel seems insignificant in the moment. Dust falls to the floor, fragments break off, but no one can tell what it's becoming. Day after day, strike after strike, progress is invisible. And then one day, after thousands of strikes, the statue emerges, breathtaking and complete. People marvel at the beauty, but they forget every invisible strike that made it possible. That is how greatness is born. One of the greatest examples of this truth comes from the life of Nelson Mandela. For 27 years, he was imprisoned. To the world outside, his life seemed wasted, forgotten, invisible. But what people couldn't see was what was being built inside him during those years. His patience, his resilience, his wisdom. When he finally emerged from prison, he carried with him the strength of all those invisible days. That unseen preparation turned him into a leader who could inspire a nation. Failure, rejection, and setbacks are part of every unstoppable journey. We live in a world that glorifies success, that places medals around the necks of winners, that celebrates those who rise to the top. But what we don't see, what's often hidden behind the curtain, is the mountain of failures that those same winners have climbed. Every achievement that shines in the light has shadows behind it. Shadows of moments when the person almost gave up, when rejection felt unbearable, when failure whispered, "This is the end." Yet it was never the end. It was only the process. Think about Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players in history. People remember the championships, the highlight reels, the slam dunks. But what most forget is that as a teenager, he was cut from his high school basketball team. Imagine that moment. Being told you're not good enough for something you love. For most people, that's crushing. For some, it's enough to make them quit. But Jordan later said, "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times, I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed." He didn't escape failure. He embraced it. He allowed it to sharpen him, to build his resilience, to ignite a fire so fierce that every rejection became fuel. Rejection feels personal because it attacks our sense of worth. Picture a young writer pouring their soul into a manuscript, believing it will change the world. They submit to publishers, only to receive rejection after rejection. That was J.K. Rowling's story. Sitting in cafes, barely making ends meet, with a daughter to feed, she sent out the story of a young wizard. One rejection said, "Children's books don't sell." Another dismissed her work without much thought. 12 publishers turned her away. For many, that would have been the death of the dream. But Rowling didn't stop. She kept sending her manuscript, and one day, a small publisher gave her a chance. That chance became Harry Potter, a story that touched millions of hearts. Every rejection she endured was part of her unstoppable journey. Without them, she wouldn't have developed the grit to keep going. Failure and rejection aren't detours on the road to success. They are the road. They are the teachers, the chisels that shape us. Imagine trying to learn to ride a bicycle without ever falling. Impossible. The wobbling, the crashes, the scraped knees. Those are the lessons that teach balance. In the same way, failure teaches strength, patience, and humility. It shows us what doesn't work so that we can discover what does. Edison's 10,000 attempts to create the light bulb weren't wasted time. They were necessary steps. He said, "Many of life's failures are people who did not realize how close they were to success when they gave up." The truth is, we fear rejection because it hurts our pride. No one enjoys being told you're not enough or you don't belong. But unstoppable people learn to hear those words differently. They don't let rejection define them. They let it refine them. Walt Disney was once fired from a newspaper for lacking imagination. Imagine that. One of the greatest visionaries in history told he wasn't creative enough. Later, he faced bankruptcy, multiple failures, and rejection from investors who thought his ideas were foolish. Yet he kept going, and his dream eventually gave the world Disneyland, a place built on imagination. Think of failure as a fire that forges metal. It burns, it hurts, it strips away weakness, but it leaves behind strength. When life rejects you, it's not telling you to stop. It's challenging you to prove how badly you want it. Every no you hear is not a wall. It's a test. Will you turn around, or will you find another way through? Oprah Winfrey's story is another powerful reminder. Fired from her first job as a TV anchor, told she was unfit for television, she could have easily given up. Instead, she took that rejection and transformed it into resilience. She built a career that would redefine media, becoming one of the most influential voices in the world. But it started with failure, with someone telling her she was enough. She turned their no into her own yes. The pattern is clear. Behind every unstoppable person is a trail of rejection letters, closed doors, failed attempts, broken dreams, and moments of despair. What separates them from those who remain stuck is not that they avoided failure, but that they refused to be defined by it. They used it. They learned from it. They rose with it. Imagine standing in front of a door you desperately want to open. You knock, but no one answers. You try again, still nothing. Rejection stings, and you're tempted to walk away. But what if that door wasn't locked? What if it just needed one more knock, one more push, one more attempt? That's how life works. Many people give up one step too soon, never realizing that success was just beyond the next rejection. Failure and rejection are painful, yes. They bruise the ego. They shake confidence. They make you question everything. But what if you stopped seeing them as enemies and started seeing them as allies? What if every setback was proof that you were on the right path, proof that you were trying, proof that you were alive and moving forward? The scars of failure are not signs of weakness. They are marks of courage. They show that you dare when others stayed safe, that you risked when others played small. In the end, unstoppable people are not those who never failed. They're those who failed, who were rejected, who faced setback after setback, and still kept moving. They are those who understood that failure isn't falling down. Failure is staying down. And as long as you rise again, as long as you keep going, you're already unstoppable. When you start with nothing, you learn hunger. Hunger is not something you can buy, and it's not something you can fake. It's born in the silence of your struggles, in the ache of your disappointments, in the nights when you lie awake thinking, there has to be more than this. Hunger is forged when you have empty pockets, when you taste rejection, when you are told you can't, and something inside you whispers back, watch me. It is the invisible fire that drives ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Think of someone who has grown up with everything handed to them. Comfort cushions their fall. Safety nets catch them when they stumble. They may enjoy success, but they rarely know the hunger to fight for it, to claw for it, to bleed for it. Now think of the person who has to start from scratch, who has to build with their bare hands, who has to scrape and scramble and sacrifice. That person develops a hunger so fierce that it cannot be tamed. Hunger becomes their fuel, their weapon, their secret advantage. There's a story about Howard Schultz, the man behind Starbucks. He grew up in a poor neighborhood in Brooklyn, living in public housing. His father worked low-paying jobs, and the family struggled to make ends meet. Schultz once said, "I saw my father lose his dignity, and I made a promise to myself. I'm going to do something that honors the working class." That hunger to create something better, to rise above his circumstances, is what pushed him to build a coffee company that became a global giant. He didn't start with wealth or privilege. He started with hunger, and that hunger fueled every decision, every risk, every sleepless night. Hunger sharpens the mind. When you don't have resources, you become resourceful. When doors don't open, you learn how to build your own doors. When the world says no, hunger teaches you to knock again, louder, stronger, more determined. It's like being in the wilderness with no map. You don't survive by waiting for someone to guide you. You survive because hunger pushes you to find your own way. Think about Sylvester Stallone again. Broke, rejected, selling his dog to survive. What kept him going? Hunger. Hunger to prove himself. Hunger to tell a story. Hunger to rise from invisibility. Hunger made him refuse the easy option of selling his script without acting in it. Hunger gave him the courage to bet on himself when no one else would. Without hunger, there is no Rocky. Without hunger, there is no story that continues to inspire millions today. Hunger is what makes you get up when an alarm rings and your body begs for more sleep. Hunger is what makes you study when your friends are partying. Hunger is what makes you practice in the dark when no one is watching. It is the voice inside that says, "Not yet, keep going." There's more inside you. Without hunger, effort fades. Without hunger, dreams die. But with hunger, even the impossible begins to bend. Think about Oprah, raised in poverty, abused, told she was worthless. She had every reason to give up, yet she rose, not because the path was easy, but because she was hungry for a life that was different. Hungry to tell her story. Hungry to connect with people. Hungry to become more than what the world said she could be. That hunger carried her through rejection, through setbacks, through pain, and that hunger turned her into one of the most powerful voices in the world. Hunger is the difference between wishing and working. Wishing is passive. It says, "I hope it happens." Hunger is active. It says, "I will make it happen." Wishing waits for luck. Hunger creates opportunity. Wishing is fragile. Hunger is unbreakable. There's a reason so many stories of greatness begin in struggle. Struggle breeds hunger, and hunger breeds resilience. When you had to fight for every inch, every meal, every chance, you learn a strength that cannot be taught in comfort. It's like steel forged in fire. The more heat it takes, the stronger it becomes. That's what hunger does to you. It burns away excuses and leaves behind determination. Imagine a runner training for a marathon. On race day, the crowd cheers, the cameras flash, and the medals shine. But what made that moment possible? The runs in the rain, the blisters on the feet, the pain in the muscles, the early mornings and the late nights. That's hunger in motion. Nobody sees it, nobody claps for it, but it's the engine behind the victory. The truth is, hunger makes you dangerous, not in a destructive way, but in a way that makes you unstoppable. Because when someone who has nothing decides they want something badly enough, there's nothing that can stand in their way. They don't care about comfort. They don't care about approval. They don't care about how long it takes. They care only about the fire inside that says, keep moving, keep fighting, keep climbing. Look at Elon Musk, facing near bankruptcy with Tesla, borrowing money to pay rent, risking everything on rockets that exploded before they succeeded. Most people would have quit after the first failure, or the second, or the third. But hunger doesn't quit. Hunger says, one more try. And eventually, the rocket flies, the company thrives, and the dream becomes reality. Hunger is the invisible force that takes zero and turns it into unstoppable. It's not talent alone. It's not intelligence alone. It's not luck alone. It's hunger. The refusal to accept ordinary, the unwillingness to settle, the relentless drive to keep moving forward no matter how many times life knocks you down. So when you start with nothing, don't see it as weakness. See it as the birth of hunger. See it as a fire that will push you harder than privilege ever could. Hunger will make you outwork others. Hunger will make you outlast others. Hunger will make you rise when others stay down. And in the end, hunger will turn your zero into something the world cannot ignore. Unstoppable people are ordinary individuals who refuse to quit. That's the part most people never understand. We tend to imagine greatness as something reserved for the chosen few, as if unstoppable people are born with lightning in their veins, with extraordinary talent, with some secret formula that the rest of us don't have. But the truth is far more humbling and far more empowering. Unstoppable people are not extraordinary by birth. They are ordinary by nature, yet they make one extraordinary choice: to keep going when others stop. Think of Thomas Edison. He wasn't born with a glowing light bulb in his hand. He was just a boy curious about how the world worked, a boy who asked too many questions. He grew up, he experimented, and he failed. Again and again, thousands of times. But Edison's greatness wasn't in his invention alone. It was in his refusal to quit. He once said, "Our greatest weakness lies in giving up. The most certain way to succeed is always to try just one more time." That's what makes someone unstoppable. Not their genius, not their privilege, not their luck, but their decision to stand up one more time, no matter how many times they've fallen. Picture a marathon runner on the last stretch of the race. Their legs are heavy. Their lungs are burning. Their body screams at them to stop. The crowd is cheering, but the noise is fading under the pounding of pain. In that moment, the difference between finishing and collapsing is not talent. It's will. Ordinary runners might stop. The unstoppable one whispers to themselves, just one more step. And step by step, they push through. That's the image of what it means to be unstoppable. It's not glamorous. It's not pretty, but it's powerful. Oprah Winfrey's story is another reminder. Born into poverty, facing abuse, told she wasn't good enough. She had every reason to give up, yet she didn't. She once said, "Turn your wounds into wisdom." That's what unstoppable people do. They don't avoid wounds. They don't avoid failure. They don't avoid pain. They take the pain, they take the wounds, and they turn them into strength. Oprah was not born with privilege. She was ordinary, just like anyone else. But her refusal to quit transformed her into a force the world could not ignore. It's easy to look at unstoppable people and think they had something special from the beginning. But ask yourself this: how many times have you started something and given up halfway? A workout plan abandoned after a week. A book never finished. A business idea never pursued beyond the first setback. It's not because you weren't capable. It's because quitting was easier. The ordinary people who become unstoppable are the ones who simply refuse to let quitting be their story. They stumble, they fall, they cry, they bleed, but they keep moving forward. Take the story of Colonel Harlan Sanders, the founder of Kentucky Fried Chicken. He was 65 years old when he set out to sell his fried chicken recipe. 65. Most people at that age are thinking of retirement, not reinvention. He traveled across America, knocking on doors, trying to sell his recipe to restaurants. He was rejected more than 1,000 times. Think about that. 1,000 doors slammed in his face. 1,000 people telling him, "No, we're not interested." Most people would have quit after 10, but he kept going, and eventually one restaurant gave him a chance. That chance turned into a global empire. Sanders wasn't unstoppable because he was extraordinary. He was unstoppable because he refused to quit. Unstoppable people don't have an easier road. In fact, their roads are often harder. They don't escape doubt. They don't escape fear. They don't escape rejection. They just learn to walk with those feelings and keep moving anyway. That's what makes them different. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's action in spite of fear. Refusal to quit is not about never doubting. It's about moving forward even while you doubt. Look at Nelson Mandela. 27 years in prison. 27 years of being told he was forgotten, that his dream of freedom was dead. An ordinary man might have let that kind of suffering break him. But Mandela refused to quit. He endured. He held on to his vision. And when he finally walked free, he did not walk with bitterness. He walked with wisdom, with grace, with leadership that would inspire generations. His greatness was not in avoiding hardship, but in refusing to let hardship define him. And here's the most powerful part. Being unstoppable is not about giant leaps. It's about small choices repeated over and over. The choice to get up when you'd rather stay in bed. The choice to try again after failure. The choice to believe in yourself when no one else does. These choices add up. They accumulate. And over time, they build momentum. That momentum is what makes someone appear unstoppable to the outside world. But to the person living it, it's just one ordinary choice after another. We tend to underestimate the power of ordinary persistence. Think of water dripping on stone. One drop is nothing. 10 drops are nothing. But thousands, millions of drops over time carve a hole through solid rock. That's what ordinary persistence does. It looks like nothing in the moment, but over time, it creates something extraordinary. Every unstoppable person has moments when they wanted to quit. Every single one. The difference is they didn't let that feeling win. They fought back against it. They said, "Not today, not now, not like this." And in that simple refusal, they found strength they didn't know they had. So the truth is, unstoppable people are not gods. They're not superheroes. They're not chosen. They're ordinary people just like you who made a decision to get back up, a decision to keep walking when the road was long, a decision to keep believing when the world doubted them. And that decision, repeated over and over, turned them into something extraordinary. Because in the end, the only difference between ordinary and unstoppable is that unstoppable refuses to quit. The decision to rise, again and again, is what turns zero into unstoppable. Life will knock you down. That is not a possibility. It is a guarantee. You will face moments when everything you work for crumbles, when the people you trusted walk away, when the dream you carried in your heart shatters into pieces, so small you wonder if it's even worth trying to put them back together. And in that moment, you have a choice. Do you stay down, broken and defeated? Or do you rise, even if it hurts, even if it feels impossible, even if you have to crawl before you can walk again? That single decision, to rise one more time, is a line that separates those who remain ordinary from those who become unstoppable. Picture a child learning to walk. They stumble, they fall, they cry, but they get back up, again and again. No one expects a child to succeed the first time. They fall hundreds of times before they take their first real steps. But never once does a child think, maybe walking isn't for me. They simply keep trying until walking becomes natural. Somewhere along the way, as adults, we lose that resilience. We start seeing failure as a verdict instead of a lesson. But unstoppable people keep that childlike spirit alive. They fall, they rise, they fall again, and they rise again until rising becomes instinct. Think about Abraham Lincoln. He is remembered as one of the greatest presidents in history, a man who held a nation together during its darkest time. But his path was filled with defeat. He lost his mother at a young age. He failed in business. He lost multiple elections. He battled depression so deep that friends had to hide sharp objects from him. By most measures, his life looked like a string of failures. But Lincoln kept rising. He kept stepping into the arena, even when the arena had thrown him out time and time again. And because he refused to stay down, he eventually rose to lead a nation and leave a legacy that still inspires generations. There is something magnetic about a person who refuses to stay down. The world expects you to give up after enough pain. It expects you to stop trying after enough rejection. But when you rise in spite of it, when you stand tall with scars still healing, you shock the world. You show them a strength that cannot be bought, a willpower that cannot be broken. Rising again and again is not about avoiding pain. It is about carrying your pain and still choosing to move forward. Think of Bethany Hamilton, the young surfer who lost her arm in a shark attack at the age of 13. Many thought her career was over. How do you surf with one arm? How do you face the ocean again after it has taken so much from you? But she chose to rise. She trained, she adapted, she fell countless times, and still she rose. Eventually, she returned to professional surfing and won competitions. She became a symbol of resilience, proving that it is not the fall that defines you, but the decision to rise. Rising again is rarely glamorous. It's often messy, quiet, and lonely. It's the single mother going back to school at night after working 2 jobs during the day. It's the entrepreneur starting their 4th business after the first 3 failed miserably. It's the artist submitting their work for the 100th time after 99 rejections. Nobody claps for you when you're in that stage. Nobody sees the courage it takes to keep going. But those unseen moments of rising are the ones that build a foundation of unstoppable. Nelson Mandela once said, "Do not judge me by my success. Judge me by how many times I fell and got back up again." That statement captures the essence of an unstoppable spirit. Success is not a straight climb. It is a cycle of rising, falling, and rising again. And every rise makes you stronger. Every rise teaches you something new. Every rise adds another layer of resilience to your character. The decision to rise is not a single moment. It is a pattern you build into your life. You rise after rejection. You rise after heartbreak. You rise after failure. You rise after loss. Each rise feels harder than the last because the weight of your scars grows heavier. But with every rise, your strength multiplies. Eventually, the weight no longer breaks you. It builds you. Consider Thomas Edison again. After countless failures, he could have stopped, but he didn't. He rose each time with a new idea, a new attempt, a new spark of belief. Or think of Malala Yousafzai, who was shot simply for wanting an education. The world expected her to retreat into silence, to be broken by fear. Instead, she rose with a louder voice, becoming the youngest Nobel Prize laureate and a global advocate for education. Rising does not erase pain. It transforms it. Imagine yourself standing in front of a mirror after your biggest failure. Your reflection shows the bruises, the exhaustion, the disappointment. It would be so easy to walk away, to say, "This is the end." But then you place your hands on the sink, you take a deep breath, and you whisper to yourself, "Not yet. I'm not done." That whisper, that tiny spark of defiance, is what makes you unstoppable. Not the victory, not the applause, not the recognition, just a simple act of choosing to rise one more time. History is filled with names we celebrate not because they never fell, but because they never stayed down. The Wright brothers crashed again and again before they finally took flight. Rosa Parks had every reason to remain silent, but she rose in defiance on a bus one ordinary day, and her choice sparked a movement. Every time someone rose when it would have been easier to quit, they planted a seed of hope that grew into something larger than themselves. So when life knocks you down, and it will, you have a choice. Stay there and let the story end, or rise and let the story continue. Every rise tells the world, you cannot break me. You can hurt me. You can reject me. You can slow me down, but you cannot stop me. And that is the essence of being unstoppable. Not perfection, not privilege, not never falling. Just rising again and again until rising becomes who you are. Oh, here you are, standing at the edge of your next chapter. Maybe you've been knocked down. Maybe you're carrying wounds no one else can see. Maybe part of you is tired of trying. But hear me now. This is not the end. This is the moment you rise. This is the moment you prove to yourself that you are stronger than your pain, bigger than your fear, and greater than your past. Rise when no one believes in you. Rise when the weight feels unbearable. Rise when your own voice whispers, quit. Rise anyway, because every rise writes a new page in your story. Every rise says, I am not done yet. Every rise pulls you closer to the unstoppable version of yourself that the world desperately needs. Don't wait for tomorrow. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait until you feel ready. Rise now. Rise today. Rise while it hurts. Rise while it's messy. Rise while the odds are stacked against you. Because when you choose to rise again and again, nothing, no failure, no rejection, no loss can hold you down. And if you remember nothing else from these words, remember this. Being unstoppable is not about never falling. It's about always rising. So rise. Rise until rising becomes who you are. Rise until the world can no longer ignore you. Rise until zero becomes unstoppable. Fall 7 times, rise 8, because the world can't stop the one who refuses to stay down. So I'll leave you with this. Don't be ashamed of starting at 0. Be ashamed of staying there. Every champion once began at the bottom. Every story worth telling started in the shadows. And yours is still being written. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. From 0 to unstoppable, it's not just a dream. It's your destiny. Your support means everything. If this resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe.